everyone, I'm Jess Wright. I'm one of the parents here at Greentown. My daughter Zoe is in Mr. Patrick's primary class, and my son Oscar is in Miss Desiree's toddler class. I did the book review for January, which was presented originally at the Shared Shelf workshop, but I'm just presenting it here again so that we can make it available online. So, the book we did for January was No Drama Discipline, the whole brain way to calm the chaos and nurture your child's developing mind. This is written by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bison. The central message of this book is that you can discipline in a way that's full of respect and nurturing, but in a way that also maintains clear and consistent boundaries, with the short term goal of having cooperation in the moment, but also the long term goal of developing the skills that your children need and the capacity to handle challenging situations when they arise. So, there's a few different people that this would be suitable for. And the authors ask you to consider some of the following scenarios. So, pasta gets thrown at the wall by your child, the dog gets painted, or your eldest child tries out a new WWE move on your younger child. Think about what happens in these scenarios and how you respond. Sometimes we respond really well, and sometimes we respond in ways that could be better. Sometimes we revert to a default, especially if we're tired, exhausted, dealing with life. So this book is basically open to anyone who is thinking about a different approach to discipline, um, and wants some strategies in their tool belt to enable them to better react in those difficult situations. So there's three main key takeaways that I got from this book, which we'll go through before looking at some practical application. And the first one is to re-educate people on what discipline is. So discipline is not punishment. Discipline actually comes from the Latin term disciplina, which means learning, teaching, and giving instruction. So the book shows you how you can discipline in a more effective way. They say fear and punishment might be effective in the moment, but they don't work over the long term. And are fear, punishment, and drama really what we want to use as primary motivators for our children? If so, we teach that power and control are the best tools to get others to do what we want them to do. So if you want to avoid this, this book's really helpful in that it's giving advice on a different way that we can discipline our children. The second key takeaway was all about our children's brains and how they develop. They really go into some scientific explanation around this topic. But one thing I really liked was that they shared a way or a little exercise you can talk to your children about their brains and how they work. And this is using the hand model. I might use this hand here. A hand model of the brain. So you can do this with me. And I also have a resource from the book that you can use to help you facilitate this with your own children. But first, you make a fist with your hand, and this is what we call the hand model of the brain. So remember that you probably know that there's a left side and a right side of the brain. There's also a upstairs and a downstairs of the brain. So the upstairs brain is where you make good decisions and do the right thing, even when you're feeling really, really upset. Now, if we lift our fingers and you can see your thumb tucked in there, this is where your big feelings come from. It lets you care about other people and feel love. It also lets you feel upset, like when you're mad or frustrated. There's nothing wrong with being upset, and that's normal, especially if your upstairs brain is helping your downstairs brain feel calm. Now, sometimes when we get really upset, what happens is we flip our lid. And essentially, what this means is that upstairs brain is no longer helping our downstairs brain regulate. And so, for our children, Sometimes we need to wait until they calm down. Sometimes we need to help them calm down so that this can come back online. Or sometimes we need to act as their upstairs brain for them because they haven't developed this yet. Um, so they go into that in a little bit more detail, but I found that that hand model was really good, visuals and language to help explain what is happening in a child's brain when they're feeling upset. The third key takeaway is, why should we try and change the way that we discipline? Why is it important to get it right? And the authors say that the moments when discipline is called for are actually some of the most important moments in parenting, times when we have the opportunity to shape our children most powerfully. They also highlight that kids who achieve the best outcomes in life emotionally, rationally, and even educationally have parents who raise them with a high degree of connection and nurturing, while also communicating and maintaining clear limits and high expectations. They also talk a bit about the brain 3 Cs, the fact that the brain is changing. Our children's brains are not developed, and there's a lot of evidence to say that they're not fully developed until we're around about 25 years old. So this applies to teenagers as well. So sometimes, like we mentioned with the hand model, we have to act for our children as their upstairs brain for them because they've reverted to their downstairs brain. So sometimes we have to help them with that, okay? And that's a good reminder for us that, they're not bad behaving children because they're bad kids. Their brains haven't developed yet. The brain is changeable. You might have heard of neuroplasticity, which essentially is a term that's fairly new, but they've been able to prove that the brain's hardware changes based on experiences. So the more positive experiences we can give our children, we're actually helping them make their brains more effective. And that is not a scientific explanation, please, but it's the crux of the issue. So changing the way we discipline can help them, in that it helps develop and build their brain. And the brain is complex. So research supports this strategy of engaging the upstairs brain and not enraging the downstairs brain. So engage, not enrage. So they're the 3 key takeaways. What does work? We need to first connect in these moments where discipline is required and then redirect. So, connection first. Just lost one of my pages here. There it is. Okay, so we've talked about this a little bit, but why connect first? So the short-term benefit is that it moves the child from reactivity, okay, here, to receptivity. Okay, so it helps bring that upstairs brain back online. Long-term benefit, it helps build the child's brain. So we're helping the children develop this part of their brain by using it. And a relational benefit in that it deepens your relationship with your child. The authors share 3 connection principles. The first one is turn down the shark music, and this is essentially referring to our past baggage as adults, and our experiences with discipline when we were children. They may have been positive, they may have been negative, and at different, ends of the spectrum. But essentially, this is talking about how triggered we get and being able to recognize that in ourselves and be able to acknowledge our own emotions and calm ourselves down while we're also trying to address our children's behavior and emotions. They also talk about chase the why, like, why is my child behaving this way? And try and get to to step away from the behavior and actually what was the result of this in the first place. And think about the how. So don't just think about what it is that you're going to say, but how you're going to say it. And they really talk about the importance of body language and tone of voice, and that this is almost more important than what the words are. They go into a lot of detail about the connection cycle, and this is a really good model to help you work through how to connect with another person or your child in this moment. Um, they talk about communicating comfort, which is, making eye contact, getting on their level, not standing over them, but, sitting down on the floor if you need to, validating their feelings, listening instead of talking, and then once they have had a time to share and to talk about what's going on for them, reflecting on what you hear. So describe back to them what they hear, and that helps them feel validated and listened to. They obviously go into a lot more detail than what I have just then. So if that's something that you struggle with, I would recommend reading this book. So once you've connected and they've calmed down and their upstairs brain is back on, you go to redirect. They have a model called 1, 2, 3 discipline, the no drama way. And essentially, it's 3 steps to redirect. So they want you as an adult to remember the definition. Discipline is teaching, not punishment. Wait until your child is ready and you're ready. Okay, so you've gotten rid of your shark music, their upstairs brain is back on. And you need to be consistent. Otherwise, they don't know what the rules are. They don't know what to expect from you. So consistency really helps alleviate a lot of these issues. But they also talk about not being too rigid. And I think that was when they initially brought that idea into the book. I was unsure about what they meant by that. They do go into a lot of detail of explaining what the differences are between being consistent and being rigid, especially when it applies to discipline. And then they talk about the 3 mindsight outcomes, which are insight, empathy, and repair. So, insight is helping kids understand their own feelings and their responses to difficult situations. Empathy gives kids practice reflecting on how their actions impact on other people. And repair asks kids to problem solve. What can they do to make things right in this situation? And involving them in those and building those skills as a young person will really set them up for success as an adult. In terms of direct applicable strategies, they have redirect, which you can see there on the page. So again, I'm just going to quickly touch on these. They go into a lot of detail and give lots of examples. But they say to reduce your words, very simple, sharp language, short sentences. Try to not say much at all. Embrace emotions. Don't shut your child's emotions down. Acknowledge them. Describe what you can see, what the behavior is that you can see, but don't preach. So don't start talking about what's good and bad and what's right and what's wrong. That's not really that helpful, but rather just talk about what you can see in the moment. Involve your child in the discipline and give them choice if possible. Reframe a no into a conditional yes. So they talk a lot about the fact that if you do a hard no, after you've calmed them down, this tends to just set them off again. So a conditional yes is a creative way of getting around, setting a boundary that they're not going to like. Emphasize the positive. This is talking about really acknowledging in the moment when you see behavior that you want to see in your child. So if they do something right, acknowledge it, describe it, explain to them that why that's a great thing that they did that. And it allows you to connect in a positive way, and it reinforces the positive behavior. It makes them want to do more of that. And then that way you're not only connecting with them when there's negative behavior. Because if they're only getting connection at that time, then you're probably going to see more of it. Creatively approach the situation. The authors here was just suggesting or reframing, I guess, that every child is different. Some of these strategies will work for some children and others won't. So I think this was just them saying that, we're not going to tell you exactly what you need to do. You have to figure that out yourself as an adult and as a parent. But hopefully some of these strategies will be helpful. And teach mindsight tools, which were the insight, empathy, and repair. So there were a lot of good quotes that I wrote down from this book, but the main one was that many parents experience regret, guilt, shame, or even hopelessness when they acknowledge what has been working and worry that they may not have been doing the best that they can. But the truth is, you have done the best that you can. If you could have done better, you would have. As you learn new principles and strategies, the goal is not to berate yourself for missed opportunities, but to try and create new opportunities. When we know better, we do better. Um, that was really nice. I think they're very supportive throughout this book. It's like a bit of a hug. And when you see your child's behavior trending in a direction you don't like, ask yourself: is he hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And I mean, in most situations, this is what it is. Personal reflection. I thought the book was great. It's really easy to read. It's fairly short. They give lots of good examples, and they have a lot of comic style images as well, which is really easy to sort of remember and engage with. It's also quite funny at times, a lot of the examples that they use. I do feel like it's a little bit repetitive, like the authors had a deadline and they had to pad the book out a little bit. But in saying that, I do feel that the advice was really solid and usable, and they had enough of reflecting and referring to the research without going too scientific with it. It reminded me of the Big Little Feelings online course, Winning the Toddler Stage, which I did 4 years ago, and I still remember a lot of examples from their program. So that might be a good one to look at. And they do refer to their other book, The Whole Brain Child, which was 12 strategies to nurture your child's developing mind. And I get the impression that that's got a lot of juicy content in it as well. So it might be a worthwhile read. And that's it from me. I hope you found that useful. The Whole Brain Child will be donated to the parent library. So that's held in the Arch Street building in the lobby now. And that's open to all parents. So if you would like to read that book, you can borrow it from the parent library in the lounge. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me or anyone on the education committee. Okay, thank you.